A simple meteor, a short wish, made his world change. When he becomes an intervener, what kind of storm will it stir up? Fraser, can't you avoid it even if you can't beat him? Nani Latiz hung up. Vegeta, how could you expect me to team up with you to kill people on Earth? TSK. What does it feel like to be a Super Saiyan? Will I tell you? A self-created novel, containing a large number of innovative ideas. It is best not to enter if you have poor acceptance ability. It is guaranteed that there will not be anything other than Dragon Ball. Do not like to fall into it. Growth stream. The female lead may not have it. Perhaps there is only one. There is no third possibility. So read it clearly before entering. Don't come to the book review section and shout around. Serious statement. Old ideas, feudalism, conservatives are not allowed to enter. If you want to read, don't use your old ideas to argue with me. Non-rational readers are not allowed to enter. There is no need for angry youths here. Keywords of the novel. Dragon Ball's Newborn Saiyan no pop-ups, Dragon Ball's Newborn Saiyan TXT Complete Collection download, Dragon Ball's Newborn Saiyan latest chapter reading. 1. An Inexplicable World. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Earth, the world of human life in the third dimension, on a quiet night, living with some accustomed humans within a certain community in a rental. A young man was lying on the sofa dejectedly. He looked at the ceiling with a drunken expression on his face, while his left hand was covering his forehead. Seems to be borrowing wine to drown my sorrows, muttering incessantly, this world is really boring. Whether it's going to school or playing computer games, isn't there any more exciting world? It seems like this place is not suitable for me to stay. Recalling all the past actions and memories, youth seems a bit weathered and powerless in today's economic era. Money is the absolute truth of everything, whether it's talking about girlfriends or wanting to do things on your own. If you don't have a certain value or interest, nothing will be discussed in such situations. There is often a group of special beings that's silk. An existence despised by the noble people, but even so there are also victims. Youth just one of them, although he is only 19 years old this year. His experience is similar to the record of a basketball red-haired monkey. The young man sat up again, then looked at the starry sky outside the window, intoxicated. He was lost in thought, while his eyes were a bit blurry as he looked at the dark environment. He walked to the windowsill, blew a gust of cold air, and raised his long bangs, which also made him sober up a bit at the same time. A glimmer of light suddenly flashed through the starry sky. The young man looked at the light and frowned slightly, then let go of his smile and said, meteors. Haha. I don't know who said it back then. Meteors seem to be able to fulfill wishes. Some people still believe in this kind of deceiving thing for children. Gaga. After the young man finished speaking, he disdainfully hiccuped a few times at the same time, looking thoughtfully into the distance. Who? A gust of cold wind blew again. The young man's face looked a bit pale at the same time. The drunkenness also became slightly clearer. Carefully open those shallow golden pupils and look into the starry sky. The young man thought to himself, if your wish can really be fulfilled, then I hope you can change this world. He didn't care at all about the sarcastic words he had said before. Instead, he prayed. As soon as the young man finished making a promise in his heart, he shook his head and self-deprecatingly said, hey. Drinking a drink has made me lose my mind. It's really a sin. Forget it. Go to sleep. How can this understandable wish be realized? After the young man finished speaking, he immediately lay on the sofa, fell asleep, and was not afraid of catching a cold in this pitch-black night. Hey, the little prince has been born. King Vegeta. The name of this little prince. How is his combat effectiveness? This is 300 points weaker than the first prince when he was born. Much stronger than the second prince. It's pretty good. Just call it Betka's. Congratulations, King Vegeta. When a person with a majestic royal aura wearing a cloak and a subordinate were discussing a child placed on a certain instrument, the sleeping child suddenly opened his smaller eyes, looking around speechless. For a long time the baby looked around with a bewildered expression and murmured, "Where the hell is this?" However, the words it conveyed were incomprehensible. To outsiders, it looked like it was just shouting, "The little prince has woken up," the subordinate standing aside suddenly said as he listened to the sound. The majestic figure next to him, dressed in a cloak, showed no signs of moving at all. He simply said calmly, "Let him stay there. When he reaches a certain age, give him exercise. If Xingu doesn't fit, throw him to the garbage planet. Just like taboo. Understood? King Vegeta." The subordinate with a reconnaissance device responded with a smile, "Vegeta. Wang." But the baby was taken aback when he heard the inexplicable language. For him, he thought he could barely decipher the names and sounds of animated characters, but this language made him a little uncomfortable because it was difficult for him to interpret. Although he could hear a part clearly, "But now I feel very tired, just earned an eye and fell asleep in the past." A few days later the baby, previously named Betkas, woke up a few days later. At this moment, he opened his smaller eyes and looked around curiously, thinking to himself, "I didn't expect it to be this haunted place." Betkas is a bit helpless because he was originally just a young man on Earth. Just because of emotional reasons, he drank alcohol, blew a cool breeze on the windowsill, and then saw a shooting star. Later, he unconsciously made a wish for a change in the world, but I didn't expect the world to change, and it has completely changed. He turned into a baby again. Born in an inexplicable and wonderful place. Moreover, this place is still such a pit. Father. Not only does he not understand a few words in his words, but he even has some problems interpreting them completely. Although he knows that time travel has been popular in recent years, he never thought he would fall for it. "And I don't even know where I've traveled to. I don't even have a maid or anything like that." It was all a group of big men who hugged him and brought him over. They were also working on a glass-like object, staring at him and doing something, which made him very unhappy. Although he knew he was a bit handsome, he didn't expect himself to be able to charm men to the point where "So I always want to grow up quickly in my heart to avoid being held by men all the time." The most satisfying aspect of Betkas is that he still maintains the light yellow SE hairstyle of his previous life, as well as those light gold SE pupils, which make him stand out a bit. Especially for races with all black hair. If it weren't for his high status, he would have been treated as a heretic long ago, because this is not a charity organization. Meanwhile, no one noticed the surroundings of the baby were wrapped with a trace of gas that could not be caught by the naked eye. It was floating around, as if protecting something. After continuously wrapping the baby for dozens of minutes, gas suddenly penetrated into the baby's body, and then fell into an inexplicable silence. At this moment, the baby's skin appeared a bit pale, but the baby himself was completely unaware of it. It seemed that nothing had happened, and the people around him were not aware of the presence of this gas. Goodbye. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. A few years later, on the planet Vegeta, a young man wearing a sturdy cosmic combat suit and a shallow gold SE cloak behind him is sitting cross-legged on a wilderness. At the same time, a tiny breath emanates from his body, erupting like flames, and not far away, there was a majestic elder wearing the same attire and a reconnaissance device staring at the young man intently, and he is the king of the planet Vegeta. Vegeta King Vegeta watched as the boy began to get lucky. He immediately clicked the open button on the reconnaissance device with his left hand. In an instant, several numbers began to appear on the reconnaissance device, but King Vegeta still looked at him with a cold expression. His face remained unchanged, as if all the numbers couldn't catch his attention. 3053, is this the highest limit? King Vegeta looked at the young man who had stopped ahead with a hint of dissatisfaction in his eyes. He thought to himself. The young man walked leisurely towards him, appearing a bit casual. King Vegeta asked the boy with a cold tone, "It's still too slow." Betkas. You had a combat power value of 1000 points when you were born. Last year, you only had 2000 points. This year, you only improved by 1000 points. Betkas looked at King Vegeta with a hint of disdain in his heart, but he said, I will work harder in the future. He was also dissatisfied and thought to himself, you damn it. How can you improve your combat power? You can increase it by 1,000 points a year. I can also be considered a little monster. Compared to Sun Wukong and his companions on Earth, I am much more rebellious now. Although I will definitely not be able to improve my combat power by tens of thousands in just a few days later. King Vegeta's eyes flashed with a murderous intent. The temperature around him suddenly dropped a lot at the same time. He said, all right, you can continue your previous cultivation. Remember. Someone will come and pick you up to a place later. You know how to do it. Betke stiffened his lips slightly. Zhang. He never said anything because he knows what King Vegeta is going to do next. In recent years, Betke has finally figured out what world he has traveled to. The well-known 7 Dragon Ball world, the powerful level that can easily destroy a planet with just a wave of his hand, and the world of many experts. This surprised him a bit at first. More importantly, it was helplessness. Because he didn't expect that he had made a wish to change the world towards the shooting star. He didn't expect that it would really change, but what made him even more helpless was I have been reborn as the 3rd prince of the Saiyan people, as the 3rd brother of Vegeta and Tabur. What left him speechless was Tabul was sent to another planet a long time ago due to his low combat power and Shin Grid. However, Vegeta and Betke themselves were left on Vegeta because their combat power and Shin Grid matched each other. However, in recent years of cultivation, Betke, who was originally ***C, has also experienced real pain. But what's even more deadly is that Vegeta and he are practicing in the same place. Over the years, the two of them have occasionally had some sparring, but Betke almost always wins more and loses less. Because on the original Earth, although Betke was a young man, he still knew some taekwondo and other things. His fighting consciousness can be considered advanced. For the prince who has no practical combat experience, Betke can be said to have an absolute advantage. This arrogant prince, Vegeta, always has a displeased expression on his face. Seeing Betke almost always turns his face pale. If it weren't for the lack of advanced political strategies in Dragon Ball world, Betke really doubted whether Vegeta would secretly take him down. After all, Vegeta now is not the kind of person who values family relationships in the future. Although he is small now, he has become arrogant. However, he is not as proud as the original work because Betke is his demon and King Vegeta's actions towards the two were only visible. He turned a blind eye and ignored them right there. Prince Betke. Please follow us. And it wasn't long before King Vegeta left. Suddenly, 3 cosmic beings walked out. Standing behind Betke with a kind smile, they said. Betke turned around and looked at the 3 cosmic beings who suddenly appeared. On the surface, they were filled with calmness, while also scrutinizing each other. 3 cosmic beings are all wearing the universal combat suits of the Dragon Ball, each carrying a reconnaissance device. However, they all look like humans and dogs. One looks like an octopus face, one looks like a dog head, and the other looks like a fish face. When Betke saw it, he even secretly laughed. I understand. Betke calmly answered. The 3 cosmic beings didn't say much. They just walked with him. Afterwards, he walked onto a small spaceship. One of the dog-headed cosmonauts looked intimidating and said, Prince Betke, that's the spaceship of King Fraser. You have to be careful. Not all the people there may be friendly to you Saiyan people. Oh. Thank you very much, Betke said faintly upon hearing this. He knew that many of Fleisa's subordinates couldn't stand the saints, including Fleisa himself. If it weren't for her qualifications or other aspects, perhaps she would have died long ago in the original work. Although Betke is also the same. Don't think too much anymore. Sit directly on the spaceship. Click the open button directly, and the circular spaceship will fly towards the huge circular spaceship above. At the same time, Betke looked through the lens at the planet Vegeta. He also looked at a circular spaceship that had just flown out in the distance, silently speaking, in my heart, goodbye. Vegeta star. And goodbye, Broly. See you later. Carrot. Fraser. He's going to spend his time on your pirate ship in the future. I hope it won't be too troublesome. I don't really like things that are too troublesome, but in order to survive, I have to become stronger. With just over 3,000 combat power, I am just a low-level miscellaneous soldier. I must reach 50,000 to 60,000 to be able to make a living under you. So, you still need to work hard. And even show great potential. But you can't be too threatening. It's just that those troublesome subordinates are a bit troublesome. Don't worry about things like Dordoria. The most important thing is the Kinuta team. That's the most troublesome guy for me. 3. Persuasion. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Oh. Big Brother Vegeta. Long time no see. When Betkas had already arrived at Fraser's spaceship with a spherical spaceship, when I walked into a room, I found the highly regarded Vegeta sitting there, looking lost in thought. I immediately spoke up, "Is it you?" Vegeta heard the sound and her face instantly became a bit embarrassed. Then he stood up and looked at Betkas with an angry expression on his face. Betkas looked at Vegeta with an angry expression in front of him, thinking to himself, if you have grown up, you still have the qualifications. Unfortunately, now. You are just a proud and upright woman. Ba. Where did you want to go? It seems like you have traveled through time. Your brain has also become strange. Hey. Nappa. Are you here too? And Betkas suddenly noticed a bald boy sitting next to him and said. The bald boy Nappa looked at Betkas as he walked in, looking a bit reserved with a respectful expression on his face. He replied, "Third Prince. Long time no see you." After looking at Vegeta and Nappa, Betkas said absent-mindedly, Are the only three of us who survived the Saints? Vegeta was taken aback at the words. Then she looked at Betkas and shouted, "What are you talking about?" And Nappa was also taken aback by Betkas' words. Betkas looked helplessly at the changing face of Vegeta. He clapped his hands slightly and carefully looked around before whispering, "Do you want to die by shouting so loudly? Big brother, this is not Vegeta's star. This is King Fraser's spaceship. If they find anything annoying, we will die. So don't shout so loudly." As soon as Betkas finished speaking, Vegeta punched him. Betkas' eyes froze as he reached out his right hand to block the punch. "Don't command me." A short 5 words. Vegeta appears particularly cold. Betkas stared at Vegeta with sharp eyes. He let out a slight sigh, then he said, "Hey. This is not an order for you. It's for your own benefit. You should be aware that there are many guys on the spaceship of King Fraser who are much stronger than us. It's strength that determines status here. Even if we are the strongest fighting race Saiyan in the universe, without strength, it's useless." Vegeta shook her head coldly. With a cold snort, she spoke up, What happened when you just said that only the 3 of us survived?" Nappa, the bald boy, looked a bit disoriented as he looked at Vegeta and Betkas. Betkas looked at Vegeta, who had completely calmed down, and began to say, "Just now. Vegeta's star was destroyed." "What are you saying?" Upon hearing this, Vegeta's face suddenly changed. Then she turned her head and looked at Betkas in surprise, and Nappa looked incredulous. Betkas repeated, "The planet Vegeta has been destroyed. Except for us, all the Saiyan people on the planet have died." Vegeta's eyes became slightly confused, but then he became firm again. Afterwards, he said coldly, "The destruction of the planet Vegeta. What's it to do with me?" Vegeta looked completely unrelated. It really made Betkas feel a bit strange. He thought to himself, this guy, shouldn't he really have no feelings for Vegeta's star? Isn't he? So, later on, he wanted Sun Wukong to help avenge Mao. It seems he thought he was going to die at that time. That's why he said that. Hee. Sure enough, it's cold outside and hot inside. Nappa looked at the indifferent Vegeta. She didn't know how to intervene, and Betkas didn't speak up. The atmosphere suddenly fell silent. In a few minutes Betkas looked at the three people who were still staring, big and small. He pretended to be mature and coughed a few times before saying, if it were the Saiyan people sent to attack other planets, there might still be survivors. Vegeta, how about it? Should we go find them in the future? After all, they are the most important survivors of our Saiyan people. It is difficult for us three alone to revive the fighting nation's strength. Vegeta looked disdainfully at Betkas and said, revitalize the honor of the Saiyan people. I'm enough alone. No need for extra trash. Betkas looked at the disdainful Vegeta and said expressionlessly, do you think you're a Super Saiyan? No need it. There are always people like this in the world. They hold themselves high, so they often die the fastest. Even a fool could tell that Betkas was mocking him. Suddenly, her face turned fierce and she said, you guy. You have the guts to say it again. Betkas stared at Vegeta without giving in and said emotionlessly, there are always people in the world who think highly of themselves, so they often die the fastest. Bastard. Vegeta was once again angry. A qigong wave from her left hand condensed without warning and rushed towards Betkas. Betkas looked coldly at the qigong wave in front of him. Without hesitation, he bent his arms in front of his face. In an instant, he was hit by the qigong wave, causing a small explosion. At the same time, smoke and dust suddenly dispersed in the room, blocking the sight of several people. Meanwhile, Vegeta looked at him with a face that was black and blue. Nappa appeared panicked because he can't get in touch with it, it's been said. There are always people in this world who hold themselves high, so they often die the fastest. And in the next second the cold words of Betkas echoed again in the smoke and dust let Vegeta's face turn black again. Betkas appeared in a slightly disheveled state in the sight of Vegeta and Nappa at the moment. He was just a little disheveled and did not suffer too much damage. This is also thanks to Betkas's previous special *** exercises on Vegeta, in addition to regular cultivation, in order to strengthen his physical fitness. This is also how he can better maintain endurance and resistance in battles. That's also why Betkas and Vegeta have been at war for many years. Often, the one who wins last is him, for the sake of our own lives. Before we have the strength, we should keep a low profile. Vegeta. There are many people under Fraser who are very dissatisfied with us Saiyan people. Now, we don't have the strength to fight against them. Betkas said with a hint of sadness. Vegeta hesitated slightly upon hearing the words, but still did not answer. She appeared a bit proud and indifferent, while Nappa still looked at the two with a blank expression. 4. First Invasion Mission. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. How are those two little ghosts? Fraser sat on his exclusive throne, holding a glass of wine in his right hand. He asked expressionlessly to Sanpo and Doria beside him, King Fraser. They are behaving very normally. They have no resistance to the planetary impact that we informed them about the destruction of the planet Vegeta. Upon hearing this, Shobo immediately stood up and reported softly, is that right? Fraser didn't change much upon hearing the words. He just took a faint sip of the wine and then said, Sanpo and Doria didn't speak because they were the ones who knew Fraser's temper the best. Fraser's indifferent behavior represented that he was thinking about something. Don't be fooled by Fraser's reputation as the Emperor of the Universe, but there are still people who are stronger than him, for example, the Kurdish king, who is his father, or Kavira, who is his brother Fraser. This is the most untouchable point for Fraser. After all, Fraser wants to be a true cosmic emperor. He's not that kind of hypocritical existence. That's why he keeps his subordinates researching technology and even conquering planets, in order to continuously strengthen his own power, in order to prepare for the future. Give them two little ghosts a chance. If they're alive, then keep going. If they're dead, then forget it. Frieza shook her glass looking out the window at the universe. He said calmly with his face, as for the two little ghosts mentioned by Fraser, they are naturally Vegeta and Betkas. The accessory Nappa was left aside by Fraser. Understood, King Fraser. I'll arrange it now, said Samba elegantly after giving a bow. by the way. Don't play them to death. If it's too difficult, it won't work for them. Fraser suddenly spoke up again. Understood. King Fraser. Shobo was taken aback at the words and then replied with a smile on his face. He turned around and walked out of the room, leaving Fraser and Doria in their respective places, thinking about things. How much potential do these two little ghosts have? I hope you don't disappoint me. Fraser took a sip of her wine and looked out the window, then said lightly, and Doria on the side remained silent. He dare not interrupt. Hey. Little ghosts. Lord Shanhua called you to the conference room. And at that moment, an alien with an ugly face pushed open the door to Betka's and others' room. Then he said impatiently, understood. Betka's mouth curved as he heard the words. Looking at Vegeta, he noticed that she looked indifferent, while Nappa next to her appeared a bit nervous, and the alien who came to inform and report just curled his lips in displeasure and walked away. Let's go, brother Vegeta. I believe something interesting will happen this time, Betka said with a smile as he looked at Vegeta. Humph. Vegeta just snorted coldly. She remained silent and stood up on her own, walking towards the door. Betka smiled slightly and followed suit. Nappa quickly followed suit. The three of them slowly swayed in the spaceship of Fraser. After a certain distance, they finally reached the conference room in their memory. This was the widest room in the spaceship, and it could also be said to be an exit without fear. Vegeta pushed open the door and walked in arrogantly, causing a wave of disdain from the following Betkas. If it were me, it would be better to kick it away with one kick. That's so domineering. Unfortunately, he didn't dare to say that, nor did he dare to do so. Because of his strength, with his current combat power of just over 3,000, he is just a potential miscellaneous soldier. Vegeta and Nappa, let alone. You're here at the right time. King Fraser is going to continue expanding his power recently, so he plans to send some capable subordinates to attack other planets. As Saints, you should be well aware of this kind of thing. I won't explain it too much. And just as he pushed open the door, Betkas, Vegeta, and Nappa discovered the fake man, Yuba, standing in front of three circular spaceships, squinting at them and saying, "Cut. Delightful subordinates. I'm afraid they want to test our strength." Betkas sneered and muttered to himself, "As for the coordinates of the planet to be attacked, your spaceship has been set. All you need to do is eliminate the original inhabitants on that planet and report back to us. We will send someone to receive them then," said Shoba seriously. "We kill people desperately. Are you taking advantage of them?" Betgas said in his heart again. But his face just seemed to jump a little. He has never actually carried out such wars that invade other planets. Both Vegeta and Nappa are involved. In the original work, Nappa should have been attacking other planets at this time. But for some reason, this time he followed Vegeta. Understood. Please report to King Fraser. We will definitely complete this mission quickly. Come back victorious. However, Vegeta said seriously at this moment, as if she was going to work hard to complete this mission. However, Betkas knew that Vegeta was just pretending on the surface. For Fraser, he only admired his strength and did not give in. That's good. Then hurry up and take action. You should have actually simulated the spaceship's design yourself, said Yuba calmly. Betkas, Vegeta, and Nappa walked towards the circular spaceship with different expressions. Then they all patted the top of the spherical spaceship together. In an instant, the cabin door opened, revealing a seat and something similar to a computer screen and keyboard inside. The three of them sat in together. At the same time, the cabin door closed in an instant. Above the Fraser spacecraft, an opening suddenly opened. Three spherical spacecraft flew out at once, then transformed into three meteors and flashed away in the universe. Although King Fraser doesn't allow you to go to a high-level combat planet, this time you also have to endure hardships. Only then will you truly realize the power of King Fraser. Shanhua looked at the three fleeting spaceships, a cold smile rising from the corner of his mouth, and secretly said in his heart at the same time, he turned around and walked towards Fraser's room with great strides. After all, he was Fraser's attendant. It was still necessary to report the situation, but Betka's, Vegeta, and Nappa, who launched their first invasion mission in the universe, do not know what kind of crisis they are facing ahead. 5. First appearance of opponent. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. In the distant starry sky, 3 spherical spaceships are constantly flying, like meteors, passing through one planet after another. The 3 teenagers sitting in the spaceship seem a bit lonely and bored. Nah. Brother Vegeta. Talk about some interesting things. Always so cold and boring. Betka said to Vegeta's spaceship with a worried expression on his face. Stop talking. Shut up. Vegeta was taking a nap. Upon hearing this sentence, she exclaimed angrily. Betka's, on the other hand, said with a look of malice, cut. What's going on now? Besides, there are only about 10 minutes left until the destination. Speak up, refresh yourself, communicate emotions, and avoid improper cooperation when necessary. Vegeta's lips twitched slightly. If it weren't for Betka's actual combat power being similar to him, he might even have had an urge to kill Betka's, although this idea had existed a long time ago. Afterwards, he said, "You guy." Betka's heard Vegeta's reply and said with a slight grin, "Nappa. Are you right?" Nappa sat in the spaceship. He was taken aback at the words. He didn't expect Betka's to implicate him. Feeling a bit bewildered, he said, This. Vegeta said impatiently, "Shut up, everyone." Although language came out of the communicator, both Betka's and Nappa could hear Vegeta's anger and displeasure. Both of them are witty and no longer speak, but they all behave differently. Betka's seems a bit pointless, while Nappa is in a state of panic for him, born into nobility. Whether it's Prince Vegeta or Prince Betka's, he can't afford to provoke anyone, not only about identity, but also about strength. You should know that currently Betka's can be said to be almost as strong as Vegeta. Although there is a slight gap, it is not much difference. Only he. Currently, his combat effectiveness is pitifully low. Betka's combat power. 3053 Vegeta combat effectiveness. 3062 Nappa combat power. 764 Comparing the 3. This gap is really funny due to Betka's relationship over the years. Vegeta has also gained a lot of cultivation. After all, with his proud personality, it is impossible for him to allow himself to lose to his own younger brother. Although I have lost n times, but their diligence is not comparable to that of ordinary people. And all 3 of them are still young. Betka's dares to estimate. When Vegeta and Nappa grow to the original level, at least Nappa's combat power may exceed 10,000 points. After all, there is a butterfly storm like him, and Vegeta could at least exceed 25,000. As for himself, set a high goal. Don't give up until it reaches 120,000 yuan. A very simple principle. Because under Fraser's command, the strongest one is Kinu himself. In the original work, Kinu has a combat power of up to 120,000. If he wants to save his life, then Betka's can only strive to surpass or level with Kinu. In that case, he will have enough voice to face Fraser's subordinates, rather than relying on the face of others. Even Doria and Sambo, who follow Fraser, are the same as for being feared by Fraser for having too high combat power. There's no need to worry at all because Fraser doesn't even have the ability to transform and has a combat power of 530,000. After a complete transformation, he broke through 100 million. Will he be afraid of a wild monkey with a combat power of only about 100,000? As for the Super Saiyan, Fraser didn't take it seriously either. While there were concerns about destroying the planet Vegeta at the time, more often than not, it was due to the arrogance of the Saiyan people obstructing, rebelling, things. That's why they were destroyed. The target has arrived. And at this moment the spaceships of the 3 of them all broke through the atmosphere of a light yellow planet. Then they quickly landed. Shwa shwa shwa. 3 meteor-like entities flew straight towards the interior of the planet, fly over many places and then land directly in a wilderness. Bang bang bang. 3 sounds of hitting the ground. The spherical spaceship fell to the ground. At the same time, it smashed out a deep pit about 10 meters deep. 3 people opened the hatch together and walked out. Betkas had just walked out, his eyes slightly fixed. At the same time, he said, the air on this planet is really pungent. Is this planet really valuable? He also held his nose in disgust. Vegeta also slightly covered her nose with one hand and said, who knows? Anyway, our mission is very simple. It's just killing all the people on this planet. The next thing is just that group of guys taking over. Then she lifted her feet and walked towards the top of the deep pit. Betkas quickly followed, and Nappa immediately followed, but as soon as the 3 of them walked outside the pit, they suddenly realized that it was a wilderness. The cold wind kept blowing, accompanied by some flying sand and rocks appearing particularly desolate, and a few hundred meters away is a village emitting thick smoke. The 3 of them suddenly seemed inexplicably excited as they watched this scene. Vegeta and Betkas exchanged a glance. They understood each other and flew straight towards the distant village. Nappa immediately followed suit. The 3 of them were very fast. In just a few blinks, they had already flown to the top of the village. Looking at the busy crowd below, Vegeta and Betkas seemed a bit mocked. Vegeta sneered, let's start with this group of guys. At the same time, her right hand slowly lifted towards the front. A purple se Qigong wave was forming in her palm, illuminating the surroundings and appearing a bit dazzling. Betkas smiled slightly and said, no problem. He also raised his left hand and used his internal energy to condense in his palm. Suddenly, a golden chi wave gradually formed. Nappa watched the 2 of them from behind and continued to do it. 3 people together quickly blasted out the Qigong wave like 3 shooting stars falling straight down. Bang! A violent explosion sound. A towering mushroom cloud emerged at the same time. A gust of strong wind swept through the surroundings. The ground stirred up waves of sand and dust, drifting in the air accompanied by some strange liquid and some severed limb scars. Vegeta looked coldly at the strange scenery below and said, it's really boring. Betkas nodded in agreement. And in the next second, 5 figures suddenly appeared in front of them. The 3 of them immediately became alert. At the same time, their expressions became serious. You 3 little devils. How dare you kill our tribe? After the 5 figures appeared, Betkas and Vegeta. Nappa finally saw the appearance of the other side wearing a earthy yellow robe. The skin on the body is a pure yellow. It is even more yellow than yellow people, with bulging muscles. At first glance, it is clear that it is a strong person. The head is like a sphere, but there is an antennae on it. Without half of the hair. Angry eyes are filled with earthy yellow pupils. The other 4 people's appearance is not much different, except for a slight change in height, unfortunately. Brother Vegeta. King Fraser did not give us scouts. We don't know the combat effectiveness of these guys, Betkas said with a slightly solemn expression as he looked at the 5 of them. Vegeta disdainfully said, it's just a bunch of trash. The 5 people across from her suddenly turned pale as they listened. Everyone's veins are exposed one by one. It seems like they've exploded with anger. You must pay the price for your actions and actions. The consequences of angering us, the chicks, will be very serious, said one of the taller starlings among the 5 people across from you with an angry expression. 6. Eliminate. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Betkas said nonchalantly, the chicks. I haven't heard of it. The cockroaches and ants no. Vegeta and Nappa both sneered at the words. Although all 3 of them are currently little ghosts, but Saiyan people can remember things since birth. Its maturity is not something that ordinary people can compare to. It's just that some aspects of experience are relatively poor. For example, personal experience. The 5 people across from each other became furious upon hearing this. At this moment, a chubby alien named Chick said angrily, give them 3 little ghosts a lesson. Afterwards, 3 taller chicos walked out in an instant. Only the chubby chicos and a thin chicos who maintained a gentlemanly demeanor stood behind. Vegeta looked at the lineup coming out from opposite. A hint of mockery appeared at the corner of her mouth and she said, a bunch of trash. Betkas and Nappa nodded in agreement. A demeanor that doesn't take the other person seriously. On the contrary, the three people across from each other, although angry, appear very calm. They are in a combat posture, seemingly ready to attack at any time. At this moment, Vegeta suddenly spoke up to Nappa behind her and said, "Nappa, can you solve it alone?" Nappa frowned lightly as she heard the words, and then confidently said, "Solve a bunch of garbage. I believe I can still do it." Vegeta smiled and said, "Then you go. I hope you don't disappoint me." Nappa walked forward alone when she heard the words, and Betkas and Vegeta stood silently from behind, watching. However, their thoughts were completely different. It's really inconvenient not to be able to sense the intensity of the gas. I can't even confirm how strong the other person is, and I don't know if Nappa can solve it. Hey! What bad luck, there is no control method for chi. Even hiding strength cannot be achieved. This is an advantage and disadvantage. I don't know if the other guys have the ability to hide chi. If so, it would be really convenient. If not so, this time when we go back, we must ask Fraser for a reconnaissance device to come out, otherwise, one day I'll meet a master who's still arrogant. Don't be fooled by it, I don't even know. Betkas secretly thought to himself. On the surface, his expression remained unchanged. Watching Nappa and the other three fighting surprisingly beyond Betkas's expectations, Nappa's battle with the opponent was not one-sided. Instead, it seemed a bit persistent. With Nappa's combat power of over 70.60, the three people on the opposite side can work together to firmly resist Nappa's attack. If it's a 1-on-1 battle, it's estimated that Nappa will kill the opponent in just a few seconds. But now it's a group fight. Even if Nappa has more combat power than the opponent, it seems a bit difficult to defeat these bastards. Nappa just punched the Chicos ahead with his right fist. Suddenly, the two Chicos from before appeared on both sides. They instantly emitted a light yellow Qigong wave towards Nappa. Nappa looked at the incoming Qigong wave with displeasure. He could only quickly dodge towards the back in anger. Otherwise, if he were hit, his injuries would definitely not be mild. Although so far, Vegeta, Betkas, and Nappa are still wearing exclusive Saiyan combat uniforms, their defensive capabilities are not very strong. Boom. When the two Qigong waves did not hit Nappa, they collided and exploded in the air. There was a loud explosion sound again and a gentle gust of wind. Vegeta watched the scene calmly beside her, seemingly not anxious. Although she had some disdain for Nappa's performance, she wouldn't show it because there was a guy standing next to him who made him the most unhappy. Who knows? If he says something, would Betkas curse him like a Buddha right away? Nappa once again blasted 3 waves of Qigong towards the 3 opposite Kickstar people. The 3 Kickstar people saw this scene and calmly dodged on their sides. However, Nappa now showed a smile of success in his attempt when the 3 Chicos come to their senses, but they found that Nappa's petite figure had disappeared into the air. Suddenly shocked, and at this moment, Nappa suddenly appeared behind the Chick man on the left and sneered, "It's too late." At the same time, he grabbed the Chickman's neck with both hands and twisted it hard. Click. A crisp sound, the sound of bones breaking, suddenly rang out. The faces of the 4 Chickstar people present suddenly seemed to sink. Staring at Nappa's expression, he appeared extremely resentful and angry. Almost at the same time, the 4 Chicos seemed to have a telepathic connection. The 2 flying Chicos landed on the ground together. Then, the 4 Chicos immediately blasted out a Qigong wave and attacked Nappa. Hey, hey, hey. You've already had to fight too much and too little. Do you still need to make progress? Betkas suddenly flashed in front of Nappa, sneering as he watched 4 powerful Qigong waves coming together. His hands spread out to the left and right, and then slowly transmitted the Qi inside his body. At the same time, 2 golden energy balls popped out of both hands, equivalent to the size of a shot put. I saw Betkas instantly close the golden energy balls of his hands together, forming a larger energy ball. Then he threw it forward. Vegeta watched this move from the side, and a cruel curve appeared at the corner of her mouth, and in the field the golden SE energy ball originally created by Betkas has instantly collided with the Qigong waves of 4 Chickstar people. A strong wave formed, swaying back and forth. Betkas, on the other hand, Opens one hand forward and controls the small energy ball like Sun Wukong controlling the elemental energy ball. Ah. The 4 Chickstar people across from each other watched the unstoppable attack. In an instant, they used all their strength. However, in an instant, the Qigong wave that the 4 of them gathered together doubled in an instant, suppressing Betka's energy ball back. It seems like I still have some skills. Betka's eyes froze slightly, his eyebrows furrowed slightly, and he said calmly, "Drink." In an instant, Betka's let out a loud shout. His outstretched hand seemed to exert force. In an instant, a strong force urged the small golden SE energy ball to move forward fiercely. It immediately suppressed the Qigong wave that had gathered the 4 Chickstar people on the opposite side. The speed was so fast that it was tongue-stopping, waiting for the 4 Chickstar people to react. The golden energy ball has already flown directly to their center and then, bang. A loud explosion rang out. It's rumored that Su Yuan at the same time, a mushroom cloud larger than before rises and the surrounding ground was also flattened in an instant due to this sudden attack. The ruins of the house disappeared without a trace. A few hundred meters around seems a bit desolate desert. At the same time, there was a large crater with a diameter of nearly 50 meters on the ground where 4 Chicos were originally standing. Nappa swallowed her tongue looking at the scene in front of him. He exclaimed in shock, "It's really amazing." Vegeta had a smile on her face. He murmured, "The power of the move this kid invented is still so powerful. It seems like I have to work hard too. Otherwise, I really won't be able to win against him." 7. Crisis. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Betka shook his slightly numb hand and then said with a slightly solemn gaze, "I didn't expect a guy from a small village to have this kind of strength. I hope there's no guy on this planet with combat power exceeding 10,000, otherwise." From the previous confrontation, Betka's had completely figured out the opponent's strength. Although he couldn't be sure, Betka's is certain that the combat power values of the 5 opponents are all within 500.700. Even the relatively thin and small Chickstar just now had combat power that surpassed Nappa. If it weren't for Betka's himself having nearly 3053 combat power, he wouldn't even be able to suppress them because the Qigong wave value of the 4 people on the opposite side has exceeded 2000 combat power. If hit, Nappa will definitely have no life or death. Betka's and Vegeta mild to severe injury, severe to frequent death. So this makes Betka's appear extremely worried, you know. Vegeta and him. Even with Nappa, a Saiyan with less than 1000 combat power, the 3 of them can only barely fight against an expert with nearly 9000 combat power at most. Even one mistake could lead to defeat and death. If there were a master on this planet with combat power exceeding 10,000, then he believed they would never be able to complete the mission this time. You should know that experts with combat power exceeding 10,000 cannot be compensated for in quantity, especially for those who are currently unfamiliar with their 3 skills, experience, and skills. Vegeta and Betka's have only occasionally fought against each other. Actual killing battles have not yet been personally experienced, and Nappa is no exception. Life and death battle. These 3 words popped up in Betka's heart immediately. He understood the approach taken by Shubwa, or rather, the purpose of Fraser. After thinking it through, Betka's couldn't help but smile bitterly and say, "It seems that we will often encounter such things in the future. Well, it's like cultivating us in life and death. But Fraser shouldn't have valued us so much. What's the reason?" Betka's didn't understand a bit. That arrogant Fraser would actually cultivate them so much. Although it seems that this planet may indeed have warriors who threaten their life existence, but Betka's and Vegeta Nappa are not without their life-saving ace. With Betka's and Vegeta's life-saving cards, they both have enough confidence to save Xing's life. As for Nappa, not within their scope of consideration at this moment, Vegeta flew up to Betka's and Nappa and said, "Act separately." A short 4 words, but it made Betka's, who had just figured it out, his eyelids twitch looking at Vegeta's serious gaze. Betka's didn't speak either. As for Nappa, this simple-minded guy wouldn't think too deeply. The 3 of them just chose different directions and started cleaning. They just didn't let go of any indigenous people on this planet. The agreed time is 1 day. If you don't come back within a day, it will be treated as death. If you encounter any trouble, you can also go back to the gathering place to request support. However, this condition clearly requires Nappa. After all, Vegeta doesn't think he will encounter any trouble. Even Betkas knows the best. Subsequently, the three of them agreed on a gathering place and quickly began their actions. Betkas slowly flew into the air towards this planet, scanning below and pondering. That guy Vegeta seems to have noticed to some extent. Yes. In the original work, this guy's mind is actually not stupid. It seems that this time. It takes time. I don't know if this planet is still at night or at dawn. And at this moment Betkas suddenly felt a sense of death in an instant. He was startled and stopped immediately. At the same time, a straight light yellow beam suddenly flashed past his eyes. It hit him in the distance at the same time, and then exploded. The slight difference made him break into a cold sweat and feel infinite excitement. Betkas quickly turned his head and looked towards the source of the beam of light. Suddenly, he noticed an old, plainly dressed chickstar standing in the air not far away, staring at him intently. Just a gaze. Betkas appears extremely solemn because he knew he had encountered a master this time. At the same time, I also feel a hint of happiness and excitement. He was fortunate that he had met such a master, not Vegeta and Nappa. Otherwise, Vegeta would have said it. Nappa would have died, and what excites me is the blood of the Saiyan in his body began to boil, and the elderly chickstar just didn't say a word, quietly flying a few meters away from Betkas. Betkas, on the other hand, clenched his fists tightly. He stared at this chickstar man intently. The elderly chickstar seemed to have thought of something. With a slight sigh, he said, "Invaders. Why did they do such cruel things?" Betkas was taken aback at the words. Thinking that there was only a slight difference from death before, he sneered, "Why?" "Because I am." The elderly chickstar silently gazed at Betkas, and Betkas slowly spoke up and finished his final words, "Saiyan people." At the moment Betkas finished speaking, it was like a gust of wind. It charged straight in front of the elderly chickos. He raised his fist and hit the wrinkled face of the chickos, but when the chickstar people heard these three words, their faces changed instantly. But they returned to normal. Just a slight turn of the head to the right. I quickly dodged Betkas' attack. Betkas wouldn't miss the opportunity to fight up close. You know, the beam of light from the old chickman's move just now scared him a lot. He didn't want this old chickman to use that move when he had a chance to catch his breath. Instantly lifted his right foot and kicked towards the waist of the chickman with a fierce force in her petite legs. At the same time, the left hand was preparing a qigong wave to blast towards the face of the elderly chickstar. A glimmer of Jing flickered in the eyes of the chickstar. It only took a blink of an eye before disappearing into place. What? Betkas kicked it empty. The pupil's contract instantly shocked as he gazed at the elderly chickos who had completely disappeared ahead. Even the qigong waves that were blasted out appeared dazzling, but at this moment suddenly, a faint voice came from behind. "You are a genius. You have such strength at a young age. But we can't let you go just because of this. Because the Saints are a group of lunatics. For the safety of this planet, we have to eliminate you." Betkas was instantly shocked. As he turned around, he suddenly noticed a light yellow beam of light coming straight towards him. The target was his heart area. Betkas gritted his teeth. In an instant I struggled to move to the left. At the same time, my right hand suddenly gathered a circular ball of light. Suddenly, I looked at the elderly chick man and saw him rushing towards me. But it's just a matter of time. The light yellow beam has already hit him all at once, along with the battle suit they were wearing. They were pierced through, accompanied by blood, and the elderly chickstar looked at the white SE light ball sent by Betkas and only slightly tilted his head. He dodged. I feel a little strange in my heart because he didn't feel threatened from that light ball. But just to be on the safe side, he turned his head and dodged. At the same time, Betkas's body suddenly flipped backwards due to the propulsion of the beam. Blood suddenly drifted out like snowflakes dripping onto the ground. At the same time, the body fell to the ground. His face was unusually pale. Just the elderly chickos did not notice Betkas is lying on the ground when looking at him with difficulty. A dangerous curve appeared at the corner of the mouth. "Old man, you will regret your actions." Betka struggled to keep his eyes open as he watched the direction of the elderly Chicos enduring the piercing wound. I felt a little proud in my heart and said, 8. Easily kill. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Vegeta had just finished eliminating the residents of a village and she suddenly noticed a shiny sphere in the distant sky. She frowned slightly and then shifted her gaze and whispered, That direction. It should be Betka's. He actually used this move. Did he encounter a formidable enemy that is difficult to resist? Vegeta is well aware of Betka's strength. He can use the move of that glowing sphere. He can also do it. It can be said that it is their ace in life. Only Nappa currently does not know how to use this move, and being able to make Betka's use this move also represents encountering formidable enemies that are difficult to resist. Vegeta thought of this feeling slightly heavier. Then he spoke up and said, it seems that this planet is not easy either. I also need to be careful. Then he no longer cared about Betka's affairs and continued to do his job of eliminating enemies, and at this moment Betka's just looked at the elderly Chicos with a painful and sarcastic smile on his face, and the Chicos looked at Betka's with such a smile. Suddenly, an ominous premonition arose in their hearts, but looking at Betka's, who has no resistance, I don't know what's going on. Suddenly remembering the glowing sphere before, I frowned and looked back, suddenly shocked. Can't it be? The knowledge of the elderly Chicos can be considered extensive. The rumors of the Saiyan people can also be said to be well known in the universe. Although most of them are notorious, Saiyan people usually have a super strong form that's ape-like. However, due to the absence of a moon on this planet, the elderly people of Chix did not pay much attention at first, but looking at Betka's like that reminds me of that ball of light immediately. It reminded him of the key point. When he turned to look at Betka's, but I found out that Betka's had already started to mutate. My petite body keeps expanding. It seems like something is about to burst out of the body. A pair of tiny arms. They became rough and wild, but his face turned incredibly ferocious at the same time. Some black hair kept emerging from the body, densely covering the entire skin. The veins are constantly expanding and exposing. It seems like it's about to explode. Just because he was wearing a Saiyan combat uniform, his clothes didn't burst. However, the wound on his chest kept emitting blood. However, Betka's was in the transformation stage and wouldn't care anymore. Roar. Just for a moment Betka's figure suddenly surged, suddenly transformed into an ape dressed in clothing several tens of meters tall. The elderly Chickstar looked at the giant ape in front of him with a surprised expression on his face. His face looked incredibly pale and said, how could it be? On the contrary, the playful voice of Betka's, who had transformed into a giant ape, came out of his big mouth. Old man. Didn't you really enjoy it before? It's time for me this time. He endured the pain in his chest, raise a huge right fist and hit the elderly Chickstar. What's shocking is although his body size has increased, Betka's speed has even increased. The elderly Chicos are just momentarily stunned. Betka's huge punch has already hit him with a single punch. The elderly Chickstar was knocked flying to the ground. At the same time, a deep pit appeared on the ground. Bang. Betka's, on the other hand, jumped on the ground with both feet. His tall body jumped into the air all at once. Open your big mouth. At the same time suddenly, a Qigong wave erupted from the mouth. The target is exactly where the Chickstar fell to the ground. Bang. Hit the spot in an instant, causing an explosion that was even more powerful than before. Thick smoke suddenly spread and sand and stones kept dancing in the air. Betka's landed again. As soon as his massive body stepped on the ground, it caused a violent vibration. Afterwards, I stared closely at the thick smoke ahead. The blood-red eyes appeared extremely sharp. Cough. Cough. And suddenly a intermittent cough came from the thick smoke, resembling wheezing or illness. Seems to be injured. When the thick smoke completely dissipated, Betka's saw the situation of the elderly Chicos at this time. The elderly Chickstar people no longer have the same composure as before. There is some yellow blood left on the head. At the same time, the right foot and right hand have disappeared without a trace, with only one left foot and left hand supporting the ground. I lifted my head and looked at the ape-like Betka's ahead with a self-blaming expression. Betka's walked slowly towards the front with huge strides. Then he looked at the elderly Chicos and sneered, you don't have to doubt or blame yourself. As the prince of the saints, I won't lose my sanity when it comes to ape-like creatures. Humph. Besides, the strength of the ape-like saints is 10 times that of before. For me now, you're not enough to see them. No, maybe even the people on the entire planet are not enough to see them. The elderly Chickstar struggled to endure the excruciating pain, lifting his head reluctantly. With a calm and intermittent expression, he said, "Humph. Although, at the right time, you were hiding, driving away, and causing harm. But if you don't get on, go back, treat, and heal, then you don't live much long. Enter, Invader." Again. This. On the planet, there are not just. There are. Me. This kind of real, powerful person. Betkas chuckled inwardly. On the surface, he appeared very calm. It was this calmness that made the elderly Chicos feel extremely uneasy. Betkas suddenly spoke up and said, "A scumbag with only 5 combat power will always be a scumbag. You shouldn't forget. Am I the only intruder on this planet? I can tell you. Besides me, there is another guy with comparable strength to me. He is my big brother. Hee. I want to see if this planet will still remain after you push him too hard." The elderly Chickstar man's face suddenly changed upon hearing this, as if he was about to struggle. However, Betkas lifted his huge foot and stepped hard. I only heard the sound of blood rushing suddenly. There was no sound. Meanwhile, Betkas instantly sprayed a qigong from his mouth towards the artificial moon created in the sky, directly destroying it. At the same time he also started to shrink from his ape-like body, once again transformed back into the appearance of the little devil Saiyan. However, due to excessive blood flow, my face appears a bit pale, lying weakly on the ground. 9. Return. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Betkas gritted his teeth looking at the wound on his chest. He felt a deep hatred for the dead old Chickstar. At the same time, he also wanted to find a way to learn how to perceive and control his anger, so as not to encounter a master and not even have the ability to counterattack. For example, this one. If it could sense chi, it wouldn't have been hit by this piercing blow. Fortunately, at the last moment, he barely avoided the crucial point. He only allowed the attack to hit the chest, but although its damage was not fatal at once, for him, serious injuries were absolute. If it weren't for the extremely tenacious life force possessed by the Saiyan people, Betkas should have gone long ago, not to mention the transformation of the giant ape. Even pretending to be dead is a difficult problem. It just gave Betkas a feeling of approaching death for the first time. He realized that death was so close. Although I have already died once in my past life, it was an unconscious death. I did not experience anything, but this time I truly want to witness it, especially the pain in my chest that felt like a knife cutting. Betkas struggled to pull out a remote control from the pocket of his combat suit. His trembling hand pressed a red SE button towards the remote control. In just an instant, Betkas released the remote control and it hit the ground in one fell swoop. Meanwhile, Betkas was panting and closing his eyes. For this injury he also has to go back because the facilities here are simply not enough for him to recover. Now he really hopes to have a fairy bean. In that case, he will be able to recover. And it was at the place where Betkas, Vegeta, and Nappa landed on the spaceship. Back then Betkas's spaceship seemed to have obeyed the call. It rose high and then flew towards Betkas all at once like a shooting star twinkling in the sky. And at the same time Nappa and Vegeta are fighting with different mindsets. Nappa encountered dozens of Chicos in a capital city, but luckily none of the enemies Nappa encountered were stronger than him, so he just has to put in a lot of effort to solve it. And Vegeta is different. Just now when he saw the artificial moon created by Betkas, he began to be cautious. Although he was proud, he also knew that it was not the time when he could be proud. Any arrogance was built on absolute strength. Since Betkas, who was comparable to him, was forced to use the last life saving card, so he doesn't dare to be careless anymore. This is not. This guy just met 2 super strong Chickstar people. At first, Vegeta was unbeatable. She also suffered a minor injury. In order to make 2 Chicos careless, Vegeta also used the technique of artificial moon. transforming herself into a giant ape in just a matter of minutes. It destroyed 2 super strong Chickstar people. You should know that the 10 times strength of Vegeta and Betkas after being transformed into giant apes is equivalent to a combat power value of over 30,000. It's not something that people on this planet can resist at all. Even if they get injured, it won't diminish to a certain extent. It's just a matter of using 40% to 50% less power, but it's already enough to deal with these chicks with combat power worth around 10,000. After Vegeta transformed into a giant ape, she no longer maintained her composure. She continued to destroy the giant ape, and the strong ones on this planet rushed over one after another. However, they were soon bombarded by Vegeta and turned into scum, so Nappa was actually the easiest place to go. Only Betkas is the unlucky one, received a heavy blow. Now Betkas has just climbed into the spaceship. Leaving the atmosphere, he is rushing back towards Fraser's spaceship. Perhaps it will be underestimated this time, but Betkas believes that as long as Vegeta and Nappa destroy all the inhabitants of that planet and come back, then everything will not be a problem if possible. Betkas doesn't want to rush back, but he doesn't have many acquaintances in the universe when he comes. Secondly, he is not familiar with the distribution of power in the universe. If he goes to the wrong place, he will have to wait until death. Only can we go back to Fraser's spaceship, so he hurriedly left this planet without even saying hello to Vegeta Nappa because he didn't have time. In his current condition, another hour is probably the limit. Under the threat of death, Betkas really has no time to hesitate. As for whether Fraser will let someone treat him or not, it depends on fate because he really has nowhere to go. Lord Shanghua. Those 3 Saiyan little ghost spaceships. One of them has already returned. A frog-headed alien was standing next to a large screen when suddenly he spoke up and reported to the nearby Shanghua. Oh. Is there only one? Are the other 2 guys dead? Said Shabo with a second thought upon hearing the words. The alien with the frog's head immediately said, upon hearing this, I will immediately search for the information discovered by the spaceship. Then, he continued to press on the keyboard with both hands. A large amount of data popped up, and the frog's head frowned as he looked around, and Xiaobua stood beside him with a nonchalant expression on his face. For the spaceships of Betkas and others, they have all done some tinkering before. For example, I put some surveillance-like machinery inside, and a few minutes later the frog-headed alien immediately said again, Lord Shibua. The intelligence has been obtained. Shibua nodded slightly and gestured to continue speaking. The frog-head alien immediately reported, the one returning this time is the Saiyan named Betkas. He fought against an indigenous person with a combat power value of around 12,000 and ultimately killed the other person. He returned because of his severe injuries. As for the battle process, it is still being analyzed. After finishing this data, everyone felt a bit shocked. Xiaobo was also a bit surprised because he is aware of the strength of the 3 Betkas. Did you kill a guy 4 times stronger than yourself with just over 3,000 combat power? It seems like he's really a tough guy with potential. To Sambo, Fraser actually said he needs to take care of the other person. He wouldn't be too weak either. The planet he sent Betkas and others to this time can be said to be at the upstream and downstream levels in the universe, just to test the potential of the 3 of them. As for threatening oneself, Xiaobo believes that he is not a scumbag who has been knocked down by just over 3,000 combat effectiveness Saiyan people, so I'm not worried. After a moment of contemplation, Xiaobo suddenly spoke up and said, prepare the emergency medicine. The Saiyan little ghost will be treated as soon as he comes back. He is a subordinate valued by King Fraser. And I will report to King Fraser. The aliens began to get busy one by one upon hearing this. 10. Summary after the war. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dee. Hoo. Betkas only feels incredibly refreshed all over his body now. It seems like soaking in cold water. The body is filled with a fresh feeling. Even the wounds on my body don't feel any pain anymore. At the same time, slightly open your eyes, but the things seen in the eyes appear very blurry. The only thing is that Betkas knows he's safe. Looking ahead at the lush green algae, he knows he's in treatment at the same time, with an oxygen supply in his mouth. Although my whole body is bare, but he doesn't care. After all, as long as the wound is healed, everything else doesn't matter, and he is still in a little ghost's body. Of course, He can't be considered to have any good development, and at this moment an alien wearing a research suit with antennae on his head looked at Betkas with a white paper resembling a record sheet and said, "The consciousness of this Saiyan little ghost has been restored. It's quite fast." And there was another alien nearby who pointed to his responsible Vegeta and Nappa and said, "Although the two little ghosts here are not as injured as the Saiyan little ghost, their consciousness has not recovered yet." The previous antennae alien once again spoke to the slightly conscious Betkas, "All right. Saiyan ghost. You're already fine. I need to remove the healing water." At the next moment, the antennae alien had already pulled down a switch and pulled the water out of Betka's algae. At the same time, Betkas also shook his head with the lens. Now he still appears to be weak and weak. After all, he is struggling on the death line. It's not just for fun. The antennae alien handed Betkas a new set of battle suits and said, "Saiyan little ghost, put on this outfit. And this is your loot this time. In the future, just wait for the orders of King Frieza or Lord Shanghua. At other times, you can't move around." But later, he threw a golden lens mechanical device towards Betkas. Betkas caught the clothes with quick eyes and hands. Then he grabbed the flying machinery in the air with his right hand. Afterwards, he suddenly woke up because he realized that he was holding a combat reconnaissance device in his right hand, a must-have item for aliens in Dragon Ball. This made him particularly happy. Because of this thing, I have gained some confidence for now. Unlike this time when I didn't know the strength of my opponent, I even suffered frequent casualties in the end. If I had known the opponent was so strong from the beginning. Betkas has been fighting since the beginning, transforming into a giant ape. After all, he doesn't want to seek death now. Since he has come to this Dragon Ball world, it's better to die as a dragon trap or a passerby armor. It's better to practice hard and fight against the protagonist's Sun Wukong. If it gets killed, I can only blame myself for my bad luck. Of course, the premise is that he can live until the moment Sun Wukong arrives in the universe. For this matter, he himself is not very confident. You should know, there are many powerful beings in the universe. At least for him, they are still very powerful, challenging, and dangerous at present. If he escapes from Fraser and goes to Earth to steal life, there may not be any danger, but for him his strength has also stopped here because the early Earth was simply not suitable for someone as powerful as him to go and working under Fraser's command. Although it's dangerous, but at least it can also enhance its strength without limitation. Because this is not an ancient emperor in China, it will be feared. Even if feared, it will only be feared by the people of Shanghua, Doria, or the Kinuta team. Fraser wouldn't have such thoughts because he has absolute strength and absolute confidence, and when it comes to dealing with the people of Dodoria, Betkas has 10,000 confidence to kill them because the most terrifying feature of the Saiyan people Dodoria and others have not experienced it yet. That's every time I come back from the brink of life and death, strength will increase. As for how much it will increase, it may be related to the current strength. Put on the battle suit again. Afterwards, he put the combat reconnaissance device on his left eye. He then clicked a button and swept towards the still unconscious Vegeta and Nappa, drop by drop. Betkas listened to the sound of mechanical analysis. Later, he saw Nappa's number and immediately raised an arc at the corner of his mouth. He murmured in a low voice, "It's really weak. This time it's only 972 combat power." Then he glanced at Vegeta again and began scanning, drop by drop. Betkas ignored the extraterrestrial beings observing him around him. He then glanced at Vegeta in surprise and thought to himself, Vegeta's combat power has increased by 4521. It's a full 50% increase compared to before. So proportionally, I'm not that bad either. And just as Betkas was secretly thinking about how strong he was at the moment, the tentacle alien next to him seemed to know his thoughts and said, "Little devil. I didn't expect you to be quite skilled. After that battle, it seemed to have improved. You have 4,752 combat power. Much higher than the little devil over there. I really don't know how you did it." As expected, the Saiyan are a group of wild monkeys that cannot be understood. Combat power value 4752. Upon hearing this, Betkas was taken aback. He didn't expect his combat power to surpass that of Vegeta. Before, Vegeta was 9 points stronger than him in combat power. But after this invasion mission, he surprisingly had nearly 129 points stronger combat power than Vegeta. The difference in growth rate makes him a bit puzzled. Bekas dragged his chin and looked at Vegeta thoughtfully. He thought to himself, is it a different degree of injury or a talent issue? He also rolled his tail around his waist. I'm a bit puzzled. It's just that he doesn't understand. He needs to go to the place he should go and summarize some things now. Because this battle, although he didn't fully experience the same fun of fighting with the use of the giant ape, it at least allowed him to go through a life and death crisis. So Bekas plans to have a post-war summary and invent some new tricks again. Then, he will explore whether he can control his anger or feel the presence of being affected. After all, this is the most crucial and fundamental thing in the Dragon Ball world. He doesn't want to rely on reconnaissance equipment all the time because that thing is ineffective for certain organisms and often that thing can even harm oneself at some point.